Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions on media production. If you have your questions, it's a great day to get them in. Just go into Makana, where you can also vote on the other producers' questions and chat with them. If you're not in Makana, just head on over to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, the easiest way, 24/7, to get your questions into us. But let's get into those questions. Courtney?
All right, thank you, CJ. Our first question comes in from Andy Kokendorfer in Viera, Florida, and he asks, can you recommend a free macOS audio visualizer app? He says he needs to key a live waveform behind panelists for a LinkedIn event about voice.
A free macOS audio visualizer app. I had read this initially as something like Scopes, something like a Sonic Atom from LoudLab. But I really missed the old iTunes audio visualizer where it would almost show up like an oscillator. You do have the ability within LoudLab Sonic Atom to create a transparent background. So you can not really key it over something, but maybe have a little bit more control with what the background looks like. But Ronnie, you had a thought?
Yeah, you can use ULEAN. Let me just show you that one. I have it running on an app on my iPad connected to the network, which is actually just streaming the audio information out to the app. But ULEAN also have app that can run on your computer as well. So that's free. Of course, the network thing that I do here is a little bit licensed. So try that one. I think you can create some cool effects of that.
Next question.
All right. Next one comes in from Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida. And he asks, at the Prompter People booth yesterday at the NAB show, the rep mentioned that the glass can affect the brightness and the color of the camera's video. Why does this happen, and how can it be corrected?
Well, Jason, we have the Mr. Prompter with us. Courtney, could you tell us a little bit about the glass?
I've designed and had manufactured many prompter glasses. The color shift, color accuracy depends on the type of metallic coating that's used, vacuum evaporated on the glass to make it partially reflective to reflect, what the monitor that's at 45 degrees below it. So if it's titanium, it has a little bit of a blue cast, so if it reflects blue, it's going to pass more yellow, or it's going to filter out more blue, like a dichroic filter. So it will color shift your image. So they were claiming that there was very little color shift. They found the correct balance of the type of metal to evaporate onto their glass that it causes very little color shift. You always want to, when using teleprompter glass, you always want to set if you have auto white balance, you want to do it after you put your prompter glass up, because it will affect the color temperature. And of course, since it is partially reflective, it will knock down the brightness of the image that's reaching the camera. Since we usually go with, they had like a 64-35 split. Most prompter glass is 70-30, which means it transmits it reflects 30% of the light coming through it, and it transmits 70%. So you'll always have about a third of a stop to a half a stop. Some of it, if it's 50-50, which is pretty high for prompter glass, it could take you up to a full stop. But there's no real way to compensate for it other than opening the lens open an extra third to a half a stop to compensate for the light loss that's coming in. So you always need a normal glass that isn't partially reflective, is only about 10% reflective, and is not bright enough to, you'd see the camera through the glass and it would interfere with the image that's being reflected of the monitor.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, and if you are doing this with prompter glass, make sure that the sealing behind the glass is really, really tight so that no light can slip in. Another unrelated question, but still related. Maybe, Courtney, you can answer me. So if you see in my glasses, I have this blue reflection because I deliberately put a white rectangle up in front of me on the display. Is there something that can reduce this, or do I just have to explain this to my optometrist when he creates a new set of glasses for me?
Well, there's two things you can do. One is anti-reflective coating, which the optometrist can apply to your glasses. It's a fluoride coating. It does, if you do have normal colored lights in front of you, it will reflect in kind of a purplish hue. That's usually the reflection of a fluoride coating. Another thing you could do is put a linear polarizer on the front of your camera and adjust it so that the reflection from your glasses can disappear almost completely. However, it does make the reflection off your skin go down. So if you have a problem with shiny skin, it'll help that. But your skin will become much more saturated, so you may have to adjust your camera's color saturation levels because it'll look much more, your skin will look much more saturated with the polarizer on. But it'll kill the reflections off your glasses quite well.
The other thing that I remarked while I was walking by the Prompter People booth was how vivid the reflected image was that I was seeing on the prompter glasses I was walking by, and it kind of struck me of how much sharper it was than what I'm used to at home. Is that just a function of the brightness or the quality of glass they're using? I'm using a newer prompter, not a Prompter People prompter.
Well, the problem you run into, since your reflection in that glass is only 30%, so you're knocking down 70% of the brightness of that monitor is coming back off that reflection. So especially if you're outside, it'll be really hard to read text because there's not enough contrast with, if you have something like a 300 nit to a 500 nit monitor, which isn't like a normal LCD monitor, it's going to be really hard to read it because you take 500 nits outdoors, your eyes stop down because of bright sunlight, and now it's knocked down by 70%. And so 500 nits knocked down by 70% is, 50 nits, something like that. So you're competing with that and the rest of your worldview, which is coming in through your irises. So it's best to have a super high brightness monitor. And I think their brightness on their monitors was at least 1,000 nits. Or seven. They had their regular ones, I think, were 500 nits, and their outdoor ones, their high bright ones, are about 1,000 nits to 1,500 nits, which can give you a really bright and vivid image that you can even read outdoors when you're knocking it down.
Next question.
Okay, that's me. Paul Wallace from Austin, Texas says Jeffrey Powers said he got to see the Gato teleprompter for the first time at NAB and was impressed, except for the small text. Is there a fix for this? And any other impressions?
Guy?
Yeah, the fix is move closer. It's a small screen, so it's a 9-inch screen. So to give you an idea how big a 9-inch screen is, this is my 9-inch teleprompter. It's as big as my head. So if you're too far away from it, think about looking at somebody's eyes and trying to read 14-point type. So this is the app that they have for the Elgato prompter. It's $279, and if you're expecting a whole lot for $279, you might get disappointed. There are models by iCan and Prompter People that are larger, and this one's been a hit. It was sold out for months, but you can see here that you can increase the font size. Just be aware that as you do that, you could fit less, so it's going to have to scroll faster. So something to play with, but realize that this is why you want to go to an NAB, is to be able to see things like this and not have to buy it, send it back because it's too small. So look around at what other people are using, watch lots of reviews. Jeffrey did a great job, but he's right. The text is small unless you can move close. So with the Ivy thing that I just held up, we're sitting like right face to face with the thing, so the text is a good size for us. So again, it just depends on how far you're set up. My prompter that I'm looking at right now, the actual mirror is about 3 feet away, but I'm on a 24-inch, so it's massive, and I can see lots of stuff. I've got gallery view and notes and our back end, so you can see a lot when you have a bigger screen. So think about that, what you want to look at. If it is people plus script or yourself, or what is it that you want to put in that prompter. Maybe you need to, and then realize that Elgato one's display link, it's a USB-C display link, so it's not HDMI. So another thing to consider.
How close do you think you are to that Ivy when you're looking at the text? It's a comfortable size to read for you, Guy. Oh, you're muted, Guy. Sorry.
Yeah, it's about 2.5 to 3 feet.
And so if you're on a Super 35 at 2.5 to 3 feet, you're probably looking, what, 20 millimeters, 22 millimeters? You have to have a decently wide lens, but yeah, interesting. Sorry, Cordy, you had something to say?
That's something else
go
to
ahead,
consider.
Guy.
You're right, because the facial characteristics on too wide of a lens, you can distort people's faces. So be aware of what lens you're using, because you don't want that look. That's for sure.
I'm kind of sensitive to it. I came in on Saturday on a 16 millimeter, and then I saw myself in the thumbnail and went, ooh. So today I figured out a way to get at least a 30 back on here, if not a 50. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and you got to remember that the Gato is aimed at the YouTuber influencer type market, which is probably running their own teleprompter, and they're working off of a small camera that's just a couple of feet from them. They're probably not going to be doing walk and talks outdoor on the beach with that particular prompter because it has to be hooked up to a laptop or via USB-C cable. And so you can't really run, 50 feet out and have a handheld camera or something and a separate prompter operator running it. They're probably running their own prompter. And a couple of things to mention when you're running a prompter that close is if you've got the font fairly small so that you can read it, as in that example, that first example with the yellow text on the red background, you'll see eye movement because you're reading across, and that close you can see your eyes move. If you back off a little bit where it's further away, you'll see less. Your eyes don't have to move as left and right as far to read the text, and so you see a little less eye movement. So it doesn't give away the fact that you're reading the text. So you want to stay a few more feet away and make the font bigger. The problem with the font bigger, you have to have an operator usually to run it, because sometimes on a prompter that small and you make the text big enough to read from about 3 or 4 feet away, you're going to have to be scrolling pretty fast. You only could get 2 or 3 words on each line. So you're going to run off the bottom of the prompter when reading very quickly. So you're going to have somebody who's following you who's very good at scrolling.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
It's a joy listening to Courtney talking about prompters. I just love it. Another thing that could be said about prompters, I have lately been, so I have a prompter in front of me with just an iPad reflecting in the glass. And of course, many people have a problem using what's it called? Sidecar?
Sidecar for iPad, yeah.
Yeah, so Sidecar for iPad just flips the image when it hits the glass. So one thing to do if you're on Mac, you can use this add-on called Better Display, which I've been playing with the last few weeks. And Better Display is also making it possible to flip the display so that you can actually read the text that are on the display. And to Paul's question about the small text, there are, of course, prompter applications, but when you're looking at, let's say, we are doing here in office hours, when the question pops up in the graphics, it's a little bit small on this small iPad mini. So what you also can do with Better Display is to actually zoom up the image and have the size so that you can read it. So, and also old people like me can actually read it, or just get a set of new glasses.
And the thing that you're looking for in Better Display, it's Stream Display, if I'm not mistaken. If you just do a mirror display or one of those options, it doesn't give you the option for the horizontal flip. However, the Stream Display lets you flip it horizontally, flip it vertically. You can even stream it into a virtual display so that you have a windowed display that you can move around. So, yeah, big fan of that. And when you're using it for I'm not sure if this was Elgato's target market when they came out with the product, but when you're using it as an Interatron, like a lot of us do, where you're trying to maintain eye contact by making sure you're looking into the lens but still see the people with whom you're talking, pardon me, that is where I think these little 7 to 9 inch teleprompters really have a home. Even though the Elgato is slick and it's all in one, I still don't think it's simple enough for Steve Jobs would say mere mortals. It's not something that I would hand off to someone without having them set up. Or maybe I don't know if others have thoughts on that. But anyway, next question.
All righty then. Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York asks, he says, I'm looking for a Windows-based software similar to Loopback on Macs that could internally route audio from different programs to different outputs. I want to monitor a splashtop audio in my headphones and send presentation audio to a sound system.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so there's probably quite a few programs, but the one I have experience with is VB Audio's Voice Meter. If we can cut to input 8 on our video. Yeah, there we go. So this is the website, and there's a free version that you can experiment with. The paid version that I've used is called Potato. But from the screen, you can see that there's lots of virtual inputs and virtual outputs, as well as physical outputs that it can route to. So this is what I've used on a PC. There may be other programs that do that, and we could switch back to camera. And there we go. That's what I use.
All right, you've heard it. You heard camera calls. We're all the other panelists are very jealous. Nick has staff, and that sounds nice. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, that I was also going to recommend VB Audio's Voice Meter. It's VoiceCemeter, as in meet you in St. Louis. So it's spelled a little bit funny. But yeah, they have a variety of products. The mixer, it doesn't do connection like Loopback does, where it has virtual audio, where it sets up virtual audio objects that you can route audio to and from. I'm talking about the mixer that's built into Windows 11. Although it does have a lot of control over your audio in the mixer. They now have, if you go to advanced, you can now adjust levels of audio to and from each application that's running on your machine at that time. So it doesn't have the neat graphical layout, but you can accomplish some stuff with the built-in audio mixer that's built into Windows. So take a look at that first and turn on the advanced tab and take a look at all you can do with sending and receiving from each running object, although it does not allow you to create a virtual object to route stuff through.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, and since we are a global community, I just want to make sure that everyone around the globe is understanding what Mr. Justin is talking about. Potato is also the same as potato.
Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael. He says, I know Beelink miniPCs have been mentioned here before. Has anyone had experience with GEEKOM range? The A7 looks very appealing for a small home server with PiKVM virtual machine.
PiKVM.
Pi. I guess as in Raspberry Pi.
I don't have
KVM controller.
I don't have any direct experience with the Beelink. I know that I'm a big fan of the Melees, as Courtney has recommended a bunch of times. We even had one at the booth at NAB, a little Melee just to run PlayOutB. It was really cool. But Courtney, you had something to say?
No, I was just going to amplify that. The Beelink does have a much broader. Melee is based primarily on the formerly called Celeron chipset from Intel, and they have some good fanless PCs. They have some that do have fans in them, but they have the quieter series is fanless. So it's great to have if you're in a tight situation. You can have a complete Windows 11 machine for around $200 to $225. It's fairly capable quad-core machine. The Beelinks do offer, they're a little bit bigger than the Melees, and they do have small fans in them. But they offer Ryzen 7s and i5 machines as well, so that you can have a multi-threaded Intel processor in there if you've got to run something that's fairly hefty. They all support the Intel graphics, so they're built onto the chip graphics. So it does work pretty well. The Quieter 4 from Melee has the N100 chip in it, which has a much more capable graphics chipset. It has 24 execution units in the graphics coprocessor built onto that chip. So you could take a look at that. It may be able to run your server with the PiKVM pretty well.
And JJ McKenna mentioned in the chat that he has among his other PCs in his small regiment of bots, he has experience with the GEEKOMs, including the A7. Just be a little wary of the distributors and where you're buying them from. Next question.
Next one comes in from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. Has anyone checked out the Zoom booth at NAB?
Ooh, I did not see the Zoom booth at NAB. I did a drive-by. Alex and Andy did a chat on Sunday night. They did a chat on Zoom and how it interacts with creators. And we got a lot of FaceTime with Andy at the booth, just as he was running our. I hope they get we're going to do behind the scenes of that, because it's so cool to see Andy building our Zoom layout for the NAB table TV in person, and then seeing it translated in real time. Ronnie?
Yeah, and another thing that is really cool, which is not released as of yet, but it's from Liminal ET, so the kind of subsidiary of Zoom that actually makes all these cool stuff like Zoom OSC, ZoomISO, etc. And the application tiles is actually where you can have an application where you can build these very nice looking and big display kind of setups or shots and combinations, just like we are doing in the booth at NAB with the Unreal Engine, but with flat panels. So you can organize your own gallery view, and you can output that to different outputs in, let's say, a conference room with big displays, and make a really, really cool looking view into the Zoom participants. So this is specifically an application I would really love to be beta testing. So if we only knew someone at Zoom that could give us beta access, that would be cool.
It's also worth noting, amid the other updates that Zoom released, they also put out the project that they used to run Zoomtopia, where they had all of the floating tiles with the different participants in Zoom. They had those they've released that project as a demo, so you can go in and kind of pick it apart and see, how did they get that working, and also, just the Unreal Engine SDK in general has been pretty great. Courtney, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether Andy Kokendorfer asked this question, and we're confused. Andy, when we were talking about Andy with Zoom, that's Andy Carluccio, who has been a friend of Office Hours here and been on the panel many times, who came from Liminal. And I'm not sure if Andy Kokendorfer asked this question, was talking about Zoom, the communications platform that we're using now, or Zoom Audio, which is always a point of confusion when you're talking about hardware at a show like NAB. So Zoom Audio, if that's what you were talking about, Andy Kokendorfer, probably has a booth, and we haven't had a chance to go see it. They have a new line of H1 series recorders that are out that do 32-bit float audio. The the H4 Essential. It's the Essential line, which is they just lowered the cost a little bit. They kind of changed the way the Zoom products, like the F Series 6, are usually made out of cast aluminum. This new one is made out of plastic, so they've been able to reduce the production costs on it. So if that's what you're talking about, we haven't gone to the Zoom Audio booth yet. They usually do have a booth at NAB, but I'm not sure, other than the Essentials, what new products they've announced.
Next question.
Friend Paul Wallace down in Austin, Texas says, how do you like this interview technique compared to Office Hours interview at Atomos about the digital phone product? And he has a link there to YouTube.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's more traditional news style. The gentleman who's interviewing, his name is Eric Naso, and he's been around the block. He actually is a camera operator for NBC in San Diego, and he's been doing this a while. So it comes down to the reporter being just personable with the talent. So in this case, his his shot looks just like you would see on the evening news. And what's funny about this is I covered. So this is Jeremy from Atomos. I covered the same. So this is me with Jeremy doing the exact same thing at CES. So it's funny to have Paul say this when it's like, hey, we've done this kind of thing in the past. So it's just a matter of, do you like this style of stick mic coming up to a person and interviewing them that way versus just giving them the handheld and having them kind of tour you around? It's just different strokes for different folks. But you tell us, what do you like more? I mean, we can get boots on the ground. Alex, I'm sure we'll be doing it over the next few days, but your feedback is super valuable in letting us know what you want to see.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was going to say that the office hours style is also fully live. And that also factors into how that production ultimately looks and how the dynamic works out. And having been, my main conference that I go to is SIGGRAPH, walking the floor feels very much like the office hours experience where you're just walking from booth to booth. And yeah, we're handing someone a microphone here so that we can hear them clearly, but it makes it so that the person that is being interviewed, they can jump in with what they would like to say at any time. They don't have to wait for the microphone to be directed towards them to answer. And so my feeling in terms of the style is that the office hours approach is much more like being on the floor. And of course, there's that whole element of being able to take questions live from around the world, from viewers, and bring them into the booth when they can't be there in person. And again, that having the microphone in the hand of the booth rep means that they can answer those questions directly without someone, having a separate microphone pointed at them and then pull it away or anything like that. So each of these things is completely different. I mean, it looks like this particular video is something that's recorded and then, maybe there was some B-roll shot and then edited and then originally and posted. And so that all has, as Guy was saying, a great, news coverage type of style to it. It's just different. And I really appreciate the office hours style because I can't be at NAB right now, and I've been watching each of the broadcasts in the last couple of days and really been enjoying it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, this year office hours and previous years of our coverage of remote events like Cinegear and NAB previously in NAM, we've had an interviewer on the ground like the YouTube video presented here. Where there's two people and then a camera shooting them, and the interviewer is standing next to the person being interviewed in the booth. This year, we took a little different tact so that instead of for the cutaway segments, live cutaway segments to people in the booth, the interviewer is those of us on the panel. And Grant Whitehead, our host, is on the panel, and he's coming in from Adelaide, Australia. So he's not at NAB. The person there is in Teratron style, talking directly to the camera, because directly above the camera is a small monitor that shows those of us on the panel, and we're talking to him over an IFB or over a speaker, so that the person in the booth is then communicating directly into the lens of the camera. So there is no, so far this year, our coverage, and we have some more this afternoon and tomorrow, has been with the panel asking questions remotely, so that the person being interviewed has contact and is showing stuff directly to the camera rather than to someone standing next to him. So it makes it a little more personable, and it includes the viewers a little better, because to them, it appears as though the person being interviewed is talking directly to them.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, one of the things we learned at CES with the Ivy was that people would talk directly into that camera. So ours is, and this rig is a little bit lower, and we're trying to take some of the things that we learned from CES with this thing. The other thing that we learned with this is that these speakers here are super powerful compared to the ones that we're using at NAB this year. This is probably 3 times louder. I mean, it's super loud. Like, people would get out of the way when we told them to get out of the way remotely, so somebody can talk, and it was that loud to disperse a crowd. So I think it's an RFI thing, like we're pushing the ball down the field and we're learning and we're seeing what works and what doesn't work. But it's just that thing of we're here to bring the experience to you. And so you tell us like, hey, I like this, I like that. I don't like this, I don't like that. And we're evolving. And then next year we'll just plus it up, and next year we'll plus it up. And the goal is to make it feel like you're there. So I think we're making progress. Progress is what makes us happy. So we're just going to take some licks, but we're going to keep on moving down the field.
Yeah, and to Guy's point, and also to Nick's point, one of the most amazing things about this community, about office hours, about getting to be really on the knife edge of how these events are covered, is that you get to see failure. You get to see things that don't work. You get to see things that do work, and then you, as part of our community, get to direct us and say, this works, this doesn't work, I like this, I like that. Nobody's ever tried to have a remote panel interact with people on the floor. And I know that there's been some pictures, and Alex has talked about it a lot on the show, but when you actually stand in front of that rig and there's a little tiny screen on the top that has our panel coming in from all over the world, at first you see the person at the booth, whoever the vendor is, kind of have this look on their face like, I don't know. And then the second Grant comes out and says, and I'm from Adelaide, South Australia, all of a sudden you almost like see something click in their head like, whoa, this is live and it is truly global. And then they say, and Ronnie's from Norway, and Craig's from Canada, and Adrian's from New Zealand. And that all of a sudden there's this moment where it clicks for the vendor and they get really impressed. But what struck me the most is that it very quickly turned into just a very natural conversation and a natural back and forth where you kind of, sometimes you see the tape run and you see them start to go into their I'm at the trade show booth selling mode. But a lot of other times it's pretty inquisitive. And then natural, I mean to say. And when you hear Courtney, for example, talking to the prompter folks yesterday, about their prompter technology, or you talk or about the core battery folks about how does the charge work? Is it diodes or is it going through the magnets? Those are really tough questions that not everybody just walking by is going to have to pull out of their head and think about. And one of my favorite things to say is none of us alone is as smart as all of us together. We've all got different life experiences, and when we bring that to the table, it really creates a unique experience. Guy, you had one more thing?
Yeah, one more thing that just dawned on me. I'm glad that Paul brought up this discussion that kind of evolved because what struck me at CES was I actually walked away from the rig and let this guy just keep talking. So I mean, you think about that. He became so engaged, the audience became so engaged that they just sat there, they were having a conversation, and I was off taking pictures. That's a pretty cool technique where you can actually get the viewers that involved and the exhibitor that engaged that they're just, they're now talking to each other as if it was a robot human standing there. So I think there's some things to learn, some takeaways. It's making me wish I would have brought this cart down and went to Siberia so we had something else to cut to at Siberia's West Hall for those of you who have been watching the show the last couple of days. But we'll probably make it over there if the LiveU will reach. And that was the cool thing about this rig that I used with Keenan's disaster group modem is we could go anywhere. It was cellular. So right now we're limited by the VisLink's radius until we get our LiveUs up. So we'll see if we can get over to South Hall or West Hall today. I'm excited to see if it works. So wish us luck.
I saw the rig one time in person. I was doing a lot of running around and trying to on Sunday and trying to run to booths to make sure that the people that were supposed to be guests for the panel were making their live hits on time. But the Stipe booth that had the green screen and the LED volume was the one where I actually saw it happen in person. And it was amazing to see how quickly it went from we're going to get one of the rank and file salespeople to as soon as they said, hey, we've got 220 people watching live from around the world, all of a sudden we got Stipe. Like we got the namesake of the company like that. And so there's a lot of power that comes with bringing in that community. If you're interested in that coverage in our community and you want to see more of it, we're there again today. So check out the Office Hours YouTube page, youtube.com/officehoursglobal, where you can see the live NAB coverage. If you'd like to submit your questions for the NAB coverage specifically, you can go to asknab.live and see us live on the floor. Thanks to our friends at Zoom for hooking us up on the bandwidth there. Also, you can keep submitting questions for this show if you hop into Makana. Get those questions in where you can also chat with the producers, vote questions up and down depending on your interest. If you're not in Makana, if you're new to the show, if you happen to find us at NAB and are saying, what are these guys all about? Head on over to askofficehours.global. You don't need to register for anything. You can sign up, get your question in front of the panel right away. And also, if you go to officehours.global, you can find out more about who we are, what we do, and click the Join Us tab, Join Us button up at the top. And that'll let you get on our email list to find out what we're talking about 7 days a week from 7 to 9 Pacific. And Sundays we don't record, but you can watch it live. It's more of an internal discussion. But if you're new to Office Hours, if you found us at NAB, welcome. And we hope that you can join the community and hang out. Next question.
Next one comes in from Chester Sweeney, right there in NAB land at Las Vegas, Nevada. He says, when restarting a M1 or M2 Mac, should I disconnect the external hard drives before restarting?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
No, I never do that. It would probably be the only time I would probably disconnect something is if I'm checking for something that is not working, and just being sure to disconnect stuff that can be causing troubles. But as a normal reboot, I do it all the time, especially because I have some software that is making my life a little bit more difficult than it should. I never unplugged anything, so just continue not unplugging things.
Go ahead, Courtney.
And just a warning, if those external hard drives do have an image of the OS X operating system on them, and if they're bootable hard drives, you will see it will come up with a different screen and offer you which drive you want to boot from. So you could actually boot from one of those external hard drives. But if you're just using them for external storage and they're not operating system drives, I just keep them connected so that they appear there and the operating system knows about them without them having to be reconnected. If you're not seeing them after you boot, then that might be a problem. Unplug them and plug them back in so it'll acquire the drive and mount the drive separately, which happens every time you plug it in.
There was a switch when they went to the Apple Silicon in how that boot options menu comes up that Courtney mentioned just a moment ago. It used to be that you held down the option key at boot, and then you got the option of which drive you wanted to boot from. Now you hold down the power button after the big C chord comes up, the boom, and then that'll allow you to see startup options. So it lets you boot into recovery mode, or you can choose one of the other volumes. And it's important to remember, though, that when it goes into a startup or a shutdown sequence, it is going to unmount the drives and make sure that there's nothing going through them and that they're ejecting safely, even though that you're unplugging them, or even though you're just shutting it down and not unplugging them, I should say. With the if you're just cutting power, though, that might not happen. So it's it's never good to shut down a computer improperly, but you do have drives to worry about. One more thing, though. I think it was when SanDisk had their challenges with those little SSDs. At one point, an odd thing that happened to Alex is that he couldn't boot his Mac Studio if the drive was plugged in. But when he unplugged the drive, he was able to. So that's kind of an aside, but just, there odd things can sometimes happen. Nick? Nope, can't hear you, Nick.
Here we go. So maybe I'm just really old or something, but my feeling in general is that continually plugging and unplugging cables into and out of your rather expensive machine is not necessarily the ideal scenario. That eventually, there's only so many times that a plug is going to go in there, and I'm sure it's millions, but I try to limit the cycles of plugging and unplugging when possible. So you're already doing some of that. If you're not using the magnetic power supply, if you're using the USB-C as a power supply, there's some of that going on. And the same thing for the drives. I mean, the drives themselves, could actually fail just from the connector interface. And so I don't know, maybe I'm old school, but I just try to limit the number of times that I'm doing that if I can. So I'm usually using docking bays for these that are, try and make sure that the hardware is aligned to that rather than just popping in cables whenever I can avoid that. But just one note there is that the hardware can fail.
Yeah, I'd agree with Nick wholeheartedly, and especially in Nick's use case, he's probably dealing with a lot of labs where there are computers that are used by multiple individuals. So there's a lot of insertions that are happening there, and that is going to degrade the life of those ports over time. So it's worth noting. One thing that I do for cameras and even for my ATEM is that I get very small, 6-inch to 1-foot jumpers that are just an extension. That way, when I'm plugging and unplugging, what I'm doing that is on the end of that little extension cord, not on the actual device itself. So there's less stress physically on that machine. Next question. Sorry, go ahead, Nick. You had one more thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, some people have stacks of things like Pokemon cards. Like that's what my stacks of SSDs look like. I just carry them around. And one of the other things that we've done, and I know this is not directly related to the question, I guess, but when you bring up the ATEM, we definitely rely. We have an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. There's so many words in that, but when we first got it, we were popping drives on and off it all the time to record those 8 tracks simultaneously. We've actually migrated now to where we keep a 2 terabyte SSD attached at all times, and we just use the built-in FTP feature to pull the files off so that we're not continually connecting and reconnecting drives to that.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. And Zach wants to know, he says, I went to record a Zoom meeting yesterday, but there was no record function in my dock. I last used it about a month ago before updating to the latest version. Is there a function that needs to be turned on?
Ronnie?
Well, it's not as much as a function that needs to be turned on. It's just buttons and things are being reorganized to make life easier for us that are working with these tools. And I'm just going to show you where you find it. So this is the new Zoom client, which we all are playing with these days. Down at the 3-dot menu, you have the record button. And what it's actually new in this version is you can just drag it down and put it on your dock wherever you want to have it. So there you go. That's how you do it.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Matthew LeConte in Oakland. I guess that's California. Huh? Zoom Rooms and ZoomISO can both extract individual participants and repurpose them, he asks.
Go ahead, Nick.
So they're really 2 very different solutions for 2 very different problems. So Zoom Rooms can do a limited amount of basically extraction because you can have multiple screens, and it's set up to be more of a friendlier software interface for a installed conference room type of thing. And if you've got multiple screens, you can assign, okay, the pinned video or the speaker video goes over on this screen and gallery views over on this screen. But I apologize if I'm incorrect on this, but I'm not aware that Zoom Rooms has a function to individually extract every participant in a particular meeting or select high number of participants and route each of those video audio signals to a separate SDI output or NDI or things like that. And that is what ZoomISO is for. So ZoomISO doesn't have the nice friendly user interface that anyone walking into a room would immediately know exactly how it works and all of that. ZoomISO is a specifically bespoke tool for connecting into a Zoom meeting and being able to selectively route as many individual participant video audio signals to individual outputs, whether they're network outputs or SDI video outputs using something like a decklink board. And that's its sole purpose in life. And you're really only limited by what resolution you're extracting and the bandwidth and power of the machine that you're using with ZoomISO. So so they're distinct from one another, and I guess that would be my initial answer on that.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, so they are a little bit different, but you can indeed, Nick, extract NDI individual feeds. It's a setting you go in the back end, and in meeting you say allow NDI, which is the fastest way I find to do it is just to search for the word NDI because there's so many settings in here. And you can even do ISO audio, so you can separate out the audio. And if you have a 1080p account, you can see here that you can set the resolution to 1080p, and you can pull. We pull 8 people all the time out of this. And it's not just Zoom Rooms that can do this. You can now do it with Mimo Live. You can do it with vMix. You can do it with Wirecast. Upcoming in another week will be Ecamm. So there are ways of just extracting individual people and having them. We call it the state, just like what you see here. I mean, I'm not sure if we're doing it today, but last week we did it when we had to move some stuff around. We were using a Zoom room in the cloud to pull office hours folks. I don't think anybody even knew this, but we weren't using the Blackmagic system. We weren't using ZoomISO. We were using Zoom rooms in the cloud to do VizRT pulls in, and we did the whole show like that in the cloud. So it's definitely something that you can do. We do it. Nice. I do a show regularly with a group of people, and it's very high end, and we use Zoom rooms solely in the cloud with redundant AWS instances. Two sets of vMixes pulling in 2 different data centers, and it's really cool to watch because it works flawlessly, and we've been doing it for months.
That's awesome, Guy. I hadn't been aware of that inside Zoom Rooms. Have you used both Zoom Rooms and ZoomISO, and have you found that one's better than the other?
ZoomISO, because of the way that the Blackmagic color is, I think you could get a little bit better color and frame rate, but from what I understand, it's the same pixels, but Alex seems to think that he gets a little bit crispier image. I don't know. I mean, I just been using NDI, and it seems to work, really, really well for what we're doing. I mean, eight participants, and I believe the number that I see is up to 12. And you can also do HDMI if you don't want to mess with NDI at all. So a traditional Zoom room was, like you were saying, built for conference rooms, and that's where this whole thing started. And we were just like, NDI, NDI, NDI. And then they put in NDI, and that's when we're like, game on. And for those of you that wind up doing this, there is a way inside of the because you'll need a controller to pin the people, or you go under view, and to extract them, you'll need a controller. So you either traditionally on site would use an iPad. We use there's a little exe app that's hidden inside of the Zoom Rooms folder. So if you go inside there, you get the controller, and that's how you can pull out the individual people and send them out over NDI. But you do have to be a co-host or have recording permissions, and that's the key. If you don't have that, you can't pull feeds. So, in fact, we'll get that going again here in after hours or somewhere. I'm working with Oliver to do something online to where we can have a meeting where people could go and test this stuff out 24 hours a day. Hopefully, we can either get it in after hours or somewhere else online to where other people can. Because now with Ecamm coming on, that's a whole other group of people that need to pull this off to see how does it work? Because you want it working for a show. You want to try your 2 ups and your 3 ups before a show, and it's always a pain to be like, "Hey, buddies, can you come into this meeting real quick so I can try my NDI and see if it's running smooth?" So yeah, cool stuff.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, and similar to a lot of the tools that Guy mentioned, like Mimo Live, etc. Just remember that inside the ZoomISO, you can have SRT. You can also utilize Siphon, which we do a lot inside this. And of course, you can separate the audio to a higher degree now in the new version 2.2. Is it? That's it's called, and you also have better control over the share windows, both video and audio in the new version. So if you are into this, just download the new version from Liminal and do a testing on your own. That's my recommendation.
And from our Makana chat, Mickey mentioned that in his experience, the Zoom Rooms has been more reliable than ZoomISO, but Tlaloc then chimed in and said no SDI, Blackmagic or AJA outputs for Zoom Rooms. And then Mickey says 4 now. So if you're not in Makana, there's a lot happening in the chat. Very informative. Next question.
Next one comes in from Dale Brooks in Las Vegas, Nevada. He says, would an M1 MacBook Air be a good computer to use for taking online courses at a state university like University of Nevada at Las Vegas?
Go ahead, Nick.
So the answer, like many other answers, is it depends. And in this case, it's going to depend on what your area of concentration is, what kind of subjects you're going to be taking. I mean, generally, an M1 MacBook Air should be fine for the vast majority of college and university subjects. And that even includes up to and including, audio media and to a certain degree, video media as well. Where you might get into more of a gray area or a potential struggle would be if you were pursuing anything in 3D graphics, where 3D graphics will tend to, a lot of the software tools will run on Macs, but they're optimized. They run better on PCs with RTX, NVIDIA RTX boards. And so that's kind of like where that threshold is. But for most what might be considered general studies and things like, language and history and core sciences and such, generally an M1 MacBook Air would be fine.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I think Nick hit it. If you're not taking a course in video graphics or something that's related to our computer science, it should work just fine for normal courses like English and math and any of the other arts. Just check, though, because these are almost always browser-based, and sometimes they will have a preference for a type of browser. If they're using interactive JavaScript, it may only run on Chrome, the Chrome browsers. So you may have to install, check to see if it's compliant with Safari, if that's your only browser. But I'd suggest downloading Chrome and running it on that MacBook Air. And do a test there with the university and make sure that it is compliant with their hardware requirements for their remote courses.
Next question.
Comes in from Chester Sweeney in Las Vegas, Nevada. Getting a lot of questions from Las Vegas. I wonder why. What is the average human light level number for each panelist today? Lumen light, sorry, not human. Sorry, I need glasses. Lumen light level number for each panelist today. Just curious.
And Guy, could you illuminate us?
I would, but my battery's dead because he didn't ask this question well in advance. So if you could send that question back for tomorrow, I could tell you. But it's probably in the 5,000 range, I'm guessing. Nick's in a proper studio, I think, so he probably has 10,000 or 20,000 lumens. But a lot of us, CJ looks like he's probably in the under 1,500 range. What do you lighten yourself with, CJ?
I've got an array of Nanlite Pavo tubes, and usually I try to keep my face at about 90% on the scopes, and then my background at 40 or 50. But I don't have enough light behind me to do that if I wanted to get the face where I wanted it. So Nanlite Pavo tubes it is. But is it lumen still? I thought if it was falling light, it's foot candles. But maybe I'm old fashioned. Go ahead, Courtney.
I think they're interchangeable. I have this problem of when we start the show, there's no sunlight. And so then I'm working at a fairly low light level. And that's why you'll see the background be much more saturated because the camera will open up its iris a little bit in the morning, and I'll work at a lower light level so you see a little more color in the background. Once the sun comes up, and unfortunately, I have windows that I can't control the light coming through very much. It's coming through translucent blinds that are on my left. There's a giant window right next to me. And so this is my living room. So I have to compete with that. So about right after sunrise, and the sun is pouring into my face probably about 2 stops over here. So in order to compensate for that, I have to increase my what starts out as my key light and turns into my fill light after sunrise to compensate for that. So now I'm probably at about 1,000 foot lamberts, foot candles, lumens.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
I don't have my light meter here, so I can't answer that directly. But if you would like to do the calculation yourself, I have 2 Lightstorm from Aperture Lightstorm 60X. which is at 5,600 Kelvin. And they are at the moment around 20%. And they also include a crate in front of it and light diffuser. So you can do the calculation if you would like to.
And then the proper studio, Mr. Justin.
Hey, so this is the behind the scenes view in here. There are 4 lights you can see across the top there, plus all of the video screens too. I do kind of wonder how much light's coming off of those. The large 100-inch screen in front of me with the camera, and I'm down here at the bottom of the screen. It throws a lot of light, and I have noticed that when that screen changes image, that the lighting on me changes. In addition to the 4 LED, they're about 1 foot square each, lights across the top. There are 2, one on either side, filling in. And then this morning, I don't know, for some reason, there was just a lot of shadow. And so we added, if you can someone pan camera 6 down a little bit so that we can see the desk? We added like a little aperture MC Pro here. It's magnet added to the desk here to just give me a little bit of fill light as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on over here. And it's probably too much. And
we're all just jealous, Nick, that we CJ and I are just sitting here like, what? We need staff. We're just like, hey, could you, take down the lighting on Courtney's side there? Can you pan the camera just a little left?
The students over there, Wave students. There's like 3 or 4 students over here, over working the console and so yeah. There's a lot going on over here.
That's awesome.
Some people just have all the fun. But sorry, Nick, or Guy, I'm sorry, I cut someone off. No, Guy, I did have a question for you though. What is the usually you've done a lot of these remotes from hotels. This is my first week trying to do this. I'm trying to set a record for doing these remotes because I did Ohio for Monday at the Eclipse, and then Saturday I was in Vegas, and now I'm in Arizona, and Friday I was in Pennsylvania. So this is all within the same 10-day period. What's your usual kit when you're going into a remote or a hotel?
Yeah, it's Insta360 Link with a couple of the Aperture MC lights, and then I have, which are those wand style, similar to the NAN light. But I really try to take advantage of, I look at the room and I try to figure out where's some practical light so that I don't have to have as much punch, and I try to figure out if I could bounce any light or use existing light or see where the light's going to come up from the sun. You could look at what time sunrise and know how the room's going to shift, because that's inevitably what happens is like in Courtney's scenario where the lighting's drifting over time. So you got to be aware of, I've had scenarios where we're at Zoomtopia and it completely changed. It went from dark, set with the start of mic checks is at like 6:15 a.m. and by the time the show's over, it's 9. And in that span, it went from darkness to completely sunny in a massively bright room. So just knowing where the light's going to come from. So Insta360 Link, a couple NAN lights, and then I think my backlight is at MC Pro. And then, to try to bring 3 lights. So two wand lights, and then a hair light, and then I try to be aware of what's going on. And then I can shift one of my colored wand lights to my background light, and that'll give me a little blue or whatever color that I want. So ideally, it's 4-point lighting, key, fill, hair light, and then background light.
Very cool. Thanks for the tips. I'm learning all the time. So we are at NAB today and tomorrow, so be sure to check the coverage. Remember, Alex is doing Mac Break from the NAB floor today, was the intention at least. So our coverage, instead of being from noon to 3, today will be from 2 to 5 Pacific time. And then tomorrow morning, it'll be 10 to noon. So you can see more of the exciting coverage. We're going to have people, as usual, coming in from all over the world. And if you're new to the show, if you've discovered us at NAB and you'd like to find out more about the community, get more involved, if what we're doing scratches your itch, so to speak, head on over to officehours.global, click Join Us, where you can sign up for the daily email, and then you can find out more about what we do. Join the Discord. It's a really vibrant Discord community. Everybody that walked up at the booth and said, hey, what are you guys doing? I think within a minute or two, I was like, and the Discord is great. There's so many experts. You can throw questions into all those threads and all those different things. And sometimes it's like I'm going to shout into the ether, and then an expert's going to come back with the right answer to my specific question. It's a pretty special place. And then my favorite question was, and how do you guys make money? I'm like, no, we don't. This is by us, for us. Let's go to the second hour. And welcome back. We're going to continue on. We were originally going to talk about NAB Graphics today, but the NAB folks are having too much fun, I guess, to be on the panel. So we're going to keep on going with the general questions, and we've got a few. Courtney, what's the next question?
Aren't you there, CJ?
I'm in Arizona.
Oh, that's right. You were there yesterday.
I was there yesterday.
Well, you had a chance to actually examine the booth. The first question up is from Guy Cochran. Who could that be in Seattle, USA? I think he's doing a Cochran here. He says, I have a still image of the NAB roaming camera. Do you want to see it? Yes.
Guy Cochran.
I'll catch that. Yeah, so I took a screenshot yesterday as I saw an opportunity. If I was a little more prepared, I could actually do this live because they just turned the cameras on the show floor. But here you could kind of see the monitor that we were talking about earlier. That I don't know what size this is. It looks like a Lilliput, and it's flipped upside down. I don't even know how we're getting the feed in. It looks like maybe one of the Vislinks is a return feed. I'm sure when we talk more about this on the total breakdown, we'll learn more. But here's the size of that speaker, and I think that it was a little too small, so we're switching more to in-ears and giving the exhibitors in-ears because it is a loud trade show floor. You can see that we got some Electro receivers, and it looks like some kind of Blackmagic converter, and then the camera here is an FX6, and then that's the Vislink transmitter on the back, and then it looks like we got some kind of Noga arm. What else? Yeah, that's it.
Guy, if you want, I just threw you in Discord chat a couple of high res stills that I took when we were doing setup. If you want to throw those up while Courtney's going to talk a little bit.
All right. Yeah, that camera rig has evolved quite a bit since I saw it last. It has about 7 or 8 more boxes glommed onto it. It kind of reminds me of, if you remember the movie Brazil, their kind of dystopian future with archaic stuff all globbed together and whatever's available is attached. It reminds me of something out of that movie. That seems to me, I'd be frightened if that came into my booth with all that stuff hanging off it. It's fairly intimidating. Maybe they could streamline it a little more. I don't know if all those things are required for converting the signals back and forth, because we got to remember this is a two-way live low latency device that is doing two-way live communications on all wirelessly. So that's a whole lot of equipment that has to be on someone's shoulder and walking around. Or did they have it? Do they have it now on a monopod so that they can just kind of rest it?
So Edwin Ruiz from Chicago is camera opping, and so whenever someone is on, they have it on his shoulder. There's a guy has a picture of it. If you want to throw that up, that's it on the shoulder. That was in the Stipe booth, and then when they're in transit or moving or have a minute in between the hits, they're actually throwing it onto a tripod. That way it's secured and the shoulder can get some rest. But yeah, if you look at it, there's 2 small rig batteries that are in the back there. One of them is it's a very power hungry rig. We were changing batteries like crazy. One of them is powering the Lilliput and has the DTAP coming out the side. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly what that's going to. And then the rest is heading up to the receivers and then the camera itself. And so that's what's happening on the back of the FX6 there. And then to the right, it's a little tricky to see, but to the right of that rear, actually it's to the left in the image of the camera, you can see those Vislink antennas coming up. And that's the receiver that's allowing us to get the coverage on the floor. And it was amazing when we were doing rehearsals on Saturday, they took that camera all the way to the Sony booth, which we thought was going to be in the shadow, in the RF shadow of the event, because of the stairwells and the movable walls and those kind of things. And they went into the Sony booth all the way around. We got one little judder. Obviously, with the amount of people that are there now, it's a little bit more interference. But just building of that rig was something fantastic. And here's the front of it. Guy has it again, where you can see the 5 or 7 inch monitor that's on the front of that has the zoom up that the folks who were interviewing are looking at, and then that Anchor speaker mount. And then right behind it is the 4 FR7 sitting in the booth with that awesome zoom setup. It is when you see that thing coming, and there's also a small army of people that are kind of following Edwin and Alex around, because you've got Scott Tupper was there taking behind the scenes footage. You had Brandon Buttram was with them a lot. You've had somebody's having to lug around Don. I forget Don's last name, was carrying the tripod around. So it's like this little cadre of office hours is going around supporting this rig, and we're showing up in force. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, on Sunday we were using the speaker, and then we went to, it was sometimes difficult because the noise level on the floor as more and more people arrive rises to the point that it can be hard to hear over that Anchor speaker. So we went to a wire IFB, and of course we had to add something else to the mobile rig as a transmitter to that IFB so it could be wireless for that separate channel. So yeah, it's gotten awfully big, and unfortunately, I don't know if they have a BDS or a battery distribution system so that all works off a large V-mount battery, or if each of those several devices have to have their own independent battery supplies if the voltages are different. And that can be your weakest link when you're traveling around with something with that many different batteries on it, or that many different sources of power that you have to deal with remotely. One battery goes down, any one of them, and it can put you off the air. So, or at least, make you silent, or not let you hear what's going on. So you have to be very conscious when you're going around like that with all those batteries turned on all the time, to conserve battery and watch your battery voltages on all those different transmitters and receivers to make sure any of them that could be your weakest link doesn't go dead in the middle of a live show, and that's pretty tough to manage. A single BDS system that could output multiple voltages would be really cool. So at least you could monitor your main battery voltage pretty closely, and when you're in downtime, swap them out with a fully charged battery. It would be great.
Yeah, the way that they're doing it is that they've got the two small Rig 99s are there, and they're going into a little V-mount plate, and then they just have the barrel pins for either 12 volt or 8 volt coming off the side, as well as the D-tap for the different devices. So that's what you're seeing there, and there is a small or there's a specific effort that's being done to make sure that there's always a fresh small rig with a lot of charge on it, waiting in the wings. So there's some good old fashioned PA running, going back and forth, making sure batteries are managed, and that the fresh ones are delivered in between the hits. But the nice thing is, because the hits are only 20 minutes, we're not having a broadcast for the whole time, so we have time to go down. Ronnie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so impressed by the camera work by our camera operator. I just imagine the weight but he has a lot of experience, so he's doing that well. Another thing I would think of is, since everything from audio to video links, etc., are wireless, when are we going to see wireless power supplies?
They probably are, but
jittering just thinking about it.
Puts the brain of the operator, because microwave can be pretty dangerous at that power level.
Next question.
Next one comes in from London Town. Alex 40 Goldner asks, has anyone been seen using Apple Motion at NAB on booths and presentations and training, or just on a Mac?
I haven't. I saw a couple Apple folks milling about. We had one or two that were kind of eyeing up the booth, but I didn't see anyone specifically using Apple Motion. Now, the tricky thing is, a lot of the post-production exhibits were in the South Hall. So most of our coverage so far has been in that central hall, whereas like Avid's got a big booth, and I'm not sure if Apple has a booth or not, but they're way over in that South Hall section. So we might have not had eyes on that. Go ahead, Courtney.
Apple, I've been going to NAB for 40 years, more than 40 years, and Apple used to have a booth, and then at some point they pulled out and stopped having a booth at NAB. They had a private room or something somewhere, or sometimes they would show their products in other people's booths, and they would provide loaner products to people to use in their booths if they were Apple associates, if it was software designed for the Apple, or they were demoing Final Cut Pro or something, one of the Apple products that their software or hardware interfaces with. They would provide them with hardware sometimes. But I don't know, I can't remember seeing Apple as a booth in the South Hall recently at all. I know they pulled out after Final Cut Pro 10 came out, so maybe they didn't want the flack back from the people that were upset that they changed from 7 to 10.
Yeah, but so I guess they're just sending some representatives down there to walk the floor like we are. All right, next question.
Next one comes in from John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. What is Open Stage Control, or OSC, and when do you use it?
So OSC is just it's an interface language. I don't know what the right term for it is, but it's a way to send commands in a standardized way to not necessarily a specific device. But Nick can probably go into a little bit more lucidity on it than I can, or at least clarity.
Well, it's difficult to make out for sure because Open Stage Control, I believe, is a specific piece of software. That's what I could find on it, and it communicates over Open Sound Control, OSC. So I like to think of OSC, the Open Sound Control, as a kind of more modern version of what MIDI was. I mean, I was using MIDI back in 1985. It was a long time ago, and MIDI has not really evolved much since then. I mean, it's a pretty rudimentary protocol. It uses a small number of bits for all of its channels and all of that. So Open Sound Control is a more modern, open communications protocol of being able to send generic commands to music and audio equipment, but it's been adopted by a whole slew of graphics tools and broadcast equipment and such. So there's a lot you can control with it. There are existing converters to convert between OSC commands and then translate that into DMX so you can control lighting. So it has, OSC, Open Sound Control, has become one of the de facto communication protocols for being able to remotely operate multiple different pieces of equipment from different genres of equipment, be it audio, video, lighting, as well as being able to bridge across multiple brands. So, Open Stage Control software, I believe, is a free download software that you can basically build out your own kind of custom bespoke screen interface to send out OSC commands so that you can adjust the brightness of a light or the audio volume of something, or you can trigger some kind of macro or command. So another example of a tool set that uses it is MixPro, is the remote control software that is kind of a third-party software. We've covered it on Office Hours a few times, that operates and adds a lot of functionality to what can be done with an ATEM video switcher. And of course, MixPro has OSC support, Open Sound Control support in it, so it can receive and or send commands in that protocol. So I don't know, in a nutshell, that's what that is.
Thank you for helping me out there. I got the OSCs threw me off. I was a little confused. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, we can talk about the software itself, or I think the question is more about OSC, like Mrs. Joshua just said. We use it primarily for communicating from BitFocus Companion. So we have our stream decks into BitFocus Companion, and BitFocus Companion is then again sending OSC commands to, for instance, our studio audio mixers. We send OSC commands to our light board, which is also controlled by OSC. We then send commands via OSC protocol to MixFX, which is this app that we can either run on our iPads or on our M1 or M2 or M3 machines to control the ATEMs, the many ATEMs, specifically for controlling super source animation, etc. So that's kind of three things you would use OSE for that I just can come up with now. There is a lot of other stuff that we also use OSE for, but there are too many to mention.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Tlaloc Lopez Waterman in San Jose, California. He asks, I've asked this before, but I'm still not clear. Why use a LiveU solution? Would it be possible to contribute and have low latency with a Zoom connection point into the panel? Is there a way to combine the two?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, when you are in such a place as Las Vegas Convention Center, which is really a difficult and very, very, there are so many frequencies that are busy. There are so many causes for interference. The building themselves are kind of blocking signals and reflecting signals. All the booths are having equipment, and even office hours is bringing equipment that adds to this interference. So the thing is, and of course, 1 million people inside all these venues use their cell phones, etc. So the one thing that LiveU is actually solving is by having a lot of different cellular modems or Wi-Fi connection or even Ethernet cabled connections through copper. And LiveU is then using all these available channels to send out audio and video, and that is being sent up to the cloud, so to speak, and LiveU is then reconnecting all the pieces of the entire picture and make a synchronized flow of video and audio. So independently, the package is sent through the available channel where there are some available bandwidth, and they are being mounted together in the cloud before hitting the receiver, which is placed either in the cloud or as a hardware unit in your studio or control room. So what we use LiveU primarily for is a backup way if the primary channel out of the venue is going sour or going bad. You also always have some cellular coverage, and we can use LiveU as a way to do it. And depending on the LiveU unit, you also have return audio, so you can use that for IFP. Of course, there will be some delay, but using just a single cellular phone, for example, to connect to Zoom, I wouldn't trust that for a broadcast. It's too flimsy.
Yeah, and connectivity is certainly challenging within the hall there. I know that bandwidth comes at a premium. Thank you again, Zoom, for giving us ours. It's also worth noting that much of the coverage that we've seen so far on the floor has not been through the LiveU, but over the ViewSonic connection. So there's a ViewSonic a transmitter that is on the camera, and then there are two receiver antennas that are on not quite on a mast, but they're kind of mounted on a high light stand or a C stand. That are receiving that feed in. The idea of the LiveU specifically was how do we cover things that aren't in the central hall? So can we get over to South Hall? Can we get to Siberia? Sorry, Guy, you had something to throw in?
Oh, I was just going to say that one of the reasons why we like the LiveUs are because of the color fidelity. So you can pump way more bandwidth through, so you can get 4K, you can get HDR, and that's one of the reasons. But at the sacrifice of having some delay there, because you're recombining those signals. So on the baby LiveUs, the ones that have just and they're in the $1,000 range, you can just have a couple SIM cards inside of those. The ones that we're using are the big boy ones that the news crews use, and they have 8 modems. So it's a toss-up as to which is the right tool. None of them are perfect, but I agree that Zoom, because we have 1080p accounts, it's solid, it's fast. I mean, we're getting, 100 milliseconds or something. I'm not sure what the rate is, but I can check my stats here in a minute to confirm. But it's super quick. I mean, it feels like a regular conversation versus a delay. So when you're doing these stand-up hits where you're used to like satellite beaming down and getting a 2-second delay, some people are saying, hey, just use a cellular phone and just do the connection that way. Just stick it in your pocket and talk that way. Or we've seen people do Unity because Unity comms travel super fast as well. So that way the conversation is in real time, but the picture is great, and then you're just waiting for that delay as it transmits and then gets recombined back together, because that's what's happening. They call it LRT, so it's not SRT. It's LiveU's cloud software that basically you got to pay a monthly fee for, and it recombines those. So what's going on is you have Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, you have all the carriers, and then it's monitoring in real time who has the best throughput, the lowest latency, and then it's either sending those packets over the one, or it's sending them over all and then recombining them. So that takes time to recombine them up in the cloud. So it just depends on, again, what you want to pay for and if that picture quality is okay. Because I've even seen people on the floor that'll do an interview and then send it up over the LiveU later to be stored. So they store and forward, they call it. So they're basically doing the hits so that if they're in a hall where there's not much connectivity, they'll still shoot the interview and record it onto media, and then go to by the window where they can actually transmit out, and then they'll hit play, and then they'll capture that up on a server up in the station, and then play it back as if it were live. So simu-live, we can call it. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
And David Brady threw into the chat, not only is or Guy said you had better latency, and David points out it's a lot cheaper than the Sat truck.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Go ahead, Courtney.
But there probably are some Sat trucks parked right outside that office hours door to the outside, so maybe we could pay for some. No, I don't think we can afford that with our nonprofit status. I wanted to note that for LiveU to work, it's best to have 4 or 5 cellular modems bonded in that LiveU from different carriers. And carrier coverage is kind of spotty inside the halls. Some of the cellular providers do have repeaters that are inside most of those big halls. And it depends on which hall you're in. You may not be able to get a strong signal to multiple carriers, maybe only one carrier, and that carrier may be swamped. So it's sometimes hard to get a cell signal out in something that's crowded. And it depends on the amount of traffic too. And when testing it, it may have worked perfectly, but now that you have 70,000 people with their cell phones turned on inside that building, you're competing for every bit that they're transmitting and receiving. So it is kind of competitive. And I noted also DJI has a really large booth, and all of their drone equipment, and they're famous for their high quality video transmission from their drones. And they may be demonstrating that nearby to our booth, and that may be swamping a lot of the bandwidth that is available in the central hall.
It is nice that the networks are operating on similar frequencies now, that things are in 4G and 5G. When it was GSM versus CDMA, I know we're going back, but you had such varied performance in terms of distance from the tower, where you're inside, where you're outside. But 8 modems, that's something else. Oh, sorry, Ronnie, you had something to throw in?
Yeah, we also tested the DJI equipment, and we used it for several things. It's pretty stable and amazing reach. So that is something that is possible to test if we would like to do that. Of course, that's not a professional tool. Another thing I would say is that there are other offers as well, and a lot of vendors is breaking into this market as well. One of those is KiloView, which just released the P3 Mini, which is actually a kind of a similar thing that LiveU has in the smaller version. So I would like to take a closer look on that. And also remember, there are even more professional encoders or mobile units encoders. As probably a lot of people would know the old brand AV West. which is being used a lot all around the globe, and that is now a part of High Vision, which also is behind the SRT protocol. So there's a lot of things happening in this area. Some kind of future predictions would be that I think there will be a lot more vendors breaking into this market, and we can have a lot more type of products and doing different stuff, but also being kind of similar regarding to the transmission and getting out of the venue you are through cellular or 4G or 5G transport.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the DJI because that is what we used on the studio tour for Seattle. And I was amazed that we went downstairs. So they have a second studio downstairs. And I was like, is it going to make it? Because it's going through the floor. And they're like, yeah, it should. And so we tested it. And they're like, just in case we have cable runs down there and we can plug in and tie in. But I'm amazed to go and look at the price of that transmitter for the Ronin DJI 4D. It's only $399, and it says it'll go 20,000 feet. So, I mean, you think of a mile is 5,280 feet. So maybe one of these would have been a pretty inexpensive solution to test on the trade show floor. I'd love to see how far this thing would go if it truly has to be line of sight, or if we could go like in that Sony Shadow where we're talking about that there's a concrete building in the line of sight, if it can actually go around that concrete building and still transmit, because that's a heck of a deal. I mean, you still need the other end. So the monitor's like another 1,500 or 1,600, and that's what gives you the receiver, gives you the HDMI out, so then you can pipe it into your swisher. So just another solution. I mean, we haven't visited the Teradek booth either. They have some really nice transmission equipment as well that starts at the small level all the way up to the mile range. So, but you're talking 10 grand. A lot of the stuff we'll rent, and you don't own it. But this Ronin 4D, I'm super impressed with, and I'll pull up some stills here in a minute, CJ, that you had sent over, and we'll take a look at the.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the DJI is in a different band than most cellular. It's in 2.4, which is the unlicensed band, and 5 gigahertz, depending upon the transmitters that you have. And they're great for line of sight, especially from a drone where it's up high, and it's easier to get line of sight to something that's up in the air. And if it's not behind a building or something, you got a great shot at it. The lower frequencies, of course, penetrate things and go through walls better and bounce off things better and can be received. But with the DJI, you're kind of limited to line of sight, although their transmitters are so powerful that I don't know if they're in an unlicensed band, so I don't know if there's any FCC things that they're violating. And being inside the NAB, they might have to adhere to all the legal requirements.
Yeah, so Guy is I don't have a switcher, so Guy is kindly relaying my stills for me. So if you look, the DJI booth actually has two parts. The right side of it is kind of like they have this thing built, and then you can go inside. And then the left side of it, they actually have a cage with netting, so you can go in there and fly the drones and see how they handle and what it's like. I don't know if you're quite going to get the sport mode in a small space like that. But it is amazing to me to think about. I know DJI's been in the drone game for a long time, but it's really amazing to me to think about 15 years ago, did we even know who DJI was? And now, I think the original Ronin just celebrated its 10th birthday, and that was a big deal when it came out. Now it's probably a 40 by 40 at NAB. I mean, it looks like a hallway that you're walking through but then I realized, oh no, I'm not walking through a hallway. This is the middle of the DJI booth. I mean, they're just massive. It's amazing to see how these new companies are coming up. Thank you for the help, Guy. Next question.
They have that new Avata 2, which they just premiered, which is a very fast FPV drone. And if you don't have a solid video transmission from that, you run into the wall pretty quick as it's moving at like 45 to 75 miles an hour. It's a very speedy drone. Next question comes in from Douglas Carmichael. And or did I skip one? Chester Sweeney, sorry. In Las Vegas, Nevada. When using USB memory keys on a current Mac operating system, is it still important to press eject first?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, as you don't know if the program or operating system is still writing data to that, you wouldn't trust everything to be written and okay. So at our studio, you always have to eject those first to be sure.
You can also run into an issue where the drive's directory or index is not matching with what's actually on the drive, and that sort of corruption can lead to, even though the data is there, the drive doesn't know that that's what those blocks are for, so you end up with mismatches. And the last thing you want is to have something that's mission critical or important that you really needed to, say, oh, I hope that a data recovery utility that's going to read the blocks and try and rebuild it can find it. Always be safe. Next question.
This one comes in from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, Nick, what start to a learning path would you suggest for Unreal Engine? And would the first hour course on Epic site be a solid beginning?
Go ahead, Nick.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, you really can't go wrong with the first hour of Unreal from Epic. I mean, it'll cover a lot of things if you've never used it before. And you could just browse through that while you're waiting for the download and install to take place, because you'll have more than an hour to spend on that anyway. So that's definitely a good place to get a good start on getting an understanding of kind of the lay of the user interface and some of the terminology. I will say that there is a YouTube influencer, Winbush, Winbush, I think. Jonathan Winbush is a motion graphics artist, video professional with experience with Cinema 4D and After Effects, and he brings all of that into Unreal Engine. And he's been covering Unreal Engine for a number of years, and I think he has a intro to Unreal series that's already posted, and so that might be something to look towards. The thing is that getting started with Unreal, the path to that is going to vary depending on your own experience. So if you're a video camera operator, your path into understanding Unreal is going to be very different than someone who is a 3D graphics artist that's familiar with Cinema 4D or Maya or something like that. So what I would recommend is just going through the effort of YouTube searching for introduction to Unreal, and maybe search with the extra clause of what your own background is, like for video operators, for camera operators, for film directors and things like that, because there are different folks out there that have made these different introductory videos based on those different backgrounds. I mean, I have a channel, but mine doesn't really have a full on-ramp series, and that's in part because my students generally come to me with 3D experience already under their belt, and that doesn't necessarily apply to, for example, the general office hours audience. And we've done some live labs in office hours in the past, and so ideally maybe we'll do some of those again where folks can ask live Q&A. I would start looking for those beginner tutorials, and then come here on Tuesdays. I will be here on Tuesdays, and you can ask questions here. And I think that is really going to be the biggest differentiator, is that you're going to watch a lot of material and you're going to discover some of it isn't related to what you want to do. You're going to discover some of it isn't necessarily clear. So come here and ask questions, and we'll answer them here.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Let's face it, Unreal Engine is a big software. Last time we counted roles that would fit into this is more than 30 roles. So kind of 1 hour would just give you the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. So what you really need to do is to, like Nick just said, you have to find your role in this kind of platform and try to learn as much as you can on that specific thing, and then slowly building stone by stone and expanding into your bigger understanding of how Unreal is built and how it works. But you have to start very carefully with just getting to know the interfaces and how to actually maneuver around and how to use the basic functionality. And there's also another source of learning, and that is the Unreal channel in Discord. We're a growing amount of people that are going into that channel specifically, and that will probably mostly be doing things with Unreal that are related to Zoom, maybe broadcast graphics, etc. So things that are kind of related to what we are doing here in office hours. So join there as well and ask questions and see if you can get some answers.
The other advice I would give when you're starting to learn a new software program is I tend to not read any of the manuals and just go in there and start pressing buttons and pulling on things and seeing what comes out the other side. That's an inefficient way to learn, but it's like playing music by ear. You're not very good at it until one day you're very good at it all of a sudden, almost overnight. You hit a threshold. I would recommend, though, go to the training that is direct from Unreal or the resources that are direct for Unreal before you venture into YouTube land. Because there's a lot of folks who are making videos that aren't always explaining things in the most constructive way for somebody who's brand new to something. What happens is you end up getting a deluge of information thrown at you, and it's like trying to move your house without any packing boxes. It's just a great big pile of stuff, and there's no context for where I should place it. So go to the Unreal resources first. Try your hand at a couple things, play around with it, download a demo project and try to deconstruct it to see how those pieces go together, like the Zoomtopia project that Zoom just released, and then maybe go to some of those other sources like YouTube or something else, so you can see what perspective does someone with a different set of life experiences bring to that table. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, and I was going to add that, I mean, one of the real strengths of Unreal Engine is that there is just literal terabytes of content available, a big chunk of it free on the Unreal Engine marketplace. So you don't have to start from scratch where, honestly, like if you open up a 3D tool like Maya or Cinema 4D or Blender, you're greeted with a blank gray screen and a grid, and where to start is very, very difficult. Okay, well, you've got a cube, and now you're going to turn that cube into a character, and wait, what? So with Unreal, you can download an entire scene that might be the interior of a log cabin, or it might be a factory, or it could be anything that's available. And there's a lot of things that are free. You can download military vehicles and things like that. And I definitely recommend using what's free on the marketplace as a way of getting introduced to the how things work in it, because you don't necessarily need to start from scratch with just a cube and how do I turn that into the truck or the camera that I want it to be. And I also think that it's a really good idea to come into it with an idea about what do I want to do with this? If you want to create a virtual background, then all right, what kind of virtual background? Do you want it to look like an apartment? Do you want it to look like an office? Download an office, download an apartment. Those are available for free. And get a camera in there and just kind of move the camera around and, oh, wait, aperture works a little bit differently in this. And what does that look like? Those kinds of things are things that I would recommend, is to have an objective that you want to start with and kind of take little steps at a time towards it. And just be careful about knowing that, like, in that first hour, in that first day, you're not going to know everything about what it is that you want to do. A story I like to share is that my daughter, who she's now 27 and lives with her husband and all, but she came home from kindergarten, her first day of kindergarten, asked her, how was school? And her answer was, it was fine, but I don't know how to read yet. And so, the first day isn't going to be the day that you're going to create your first 3-hour cinematic masterpiece. You're not going to recreate Dune. But you will start with the first piece. For me, when I'm teaching students, I usually start with what's called the cine camera. It's the camera that has an aperture setting and gives you depth of field and things like that. And that kind of gets things started where you can start by taking photos and start by recording, essentially creating video. So that's where we start, when we're talking about animation and graphics. I do want to actually share one tip depending on your computer. I'm going to switch to, which I hope is my screen share. That is not my screen share. This should be my screen share. That's my screen share. There we go. So here's Unreal Engine. By the way, this is Unreal Engine 5.4 preview, the motion graphics features running on my MacBook Air M2. One of the things that we generally talk about with Unreal Engine is that a lot of the most highest fidelity graphics features for it are designed around leveraging NVIDIA RTX graphics boards, but Unreal Engine is a multi-platform, cross-platform development tool. You can develop iOS applications with it, iOS games. You won't necessarily have access to some of the latest, greatest high-performance features that leverage the RTX technologies, but to have a wonderful experience, one of the things that I do recommend, particularly for lower-end computers, is go into settings, go into engine scalability, and change away from this epic or cinematic. This is the default. This is epic visual results, and this will be pretty taxing on an M2 chip, for example. Go ahead and set it to low, and the graphics quality might not be top of the line for you, but you're going to have a much better experience navigating around the software, because now, and I didn't even have to go as far as low. I mean, I think with it on the Air, a lot of times I'll adjust a few of these settings to high, but maybe not all of them.
We got to keep moving, but I think we need a second hour on Unreal, because I'm sitting there as much as I want to selfishly be like, oh, that looks so good, I just want to see it.
We'll get there. So I'll end it there and just say that there's lots that can be done, but have fun. It's a game.
That's so cool. Thank you. Next question.
Well, next one is another Unreal question from Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. He says, now we got Nick here. In Unreal Engine, is there a way to use a plugin that wasn't updated for 4.5 version yet?
Hey, go ahead, Nick. I can't hear you, Nick.
Okay. Technically, usually, yes. However, it will generally require you to recompile that plugin. So the majority of plugins for Unreal Engine come along with all of their source code in various folders. So if you're on a PC, you will want to have Visual Studio installed, the latest, greatest version, with all of the Unreal Engine modules, which, those are checkbox options when you install Visual Studio. So at that point now, not only are you learning Unreal Engine, you are also learning Visual Studio. So if you already know Visual Studio and you're already comfortable with that, it should be possible for you to work out how to recompile the plugin. And chances are, if it's been around a while, the plugin should still work. It's not always the case, but that is a possibility. Although if we didn't have enough time to answer how do I get started with Unreal, there's no way for me to get into that, in detail here. But in theory, it's possible. Either that, or just wait a little while. In a few weeks, that plugin will probably be built for 5.4. I know I'm waiting for NDI to get their 5.4 compiled plugins, and I haven't tried to compile their 5.3 plugin for it yet.
Good, Ronnie.
This is a question to Nick. Is it possible to run the newly added Zoom plugin, the API plugin for the meetings, and run that on 5.4 and just recompile it? Do you know?
I don't know. I haven't tried it yet. Again, it does come with all the source, and it even comes with hooks into the underlying C++ SDK for Visual Studio. So I suspect that it's possible, but so far, particularly with 5.4 being in preview mode, I've pretty much just been using 5.4 as it comes and just experimenting with the features so that I'm getting an understanding of them. But the Zoom plugin on 5.3 has been running extremely well for me. And so that's where I've been using it. So I don't know the direct answer to that, and I would probably stick to 5.3 for now.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Nick Jesherson. Funny you should ask. And Philadelphia. And Nick asks the panel here, have any of the panelists noticed any particularly impressive or surprising implementations or demonstrations of AI at NAB this year?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I got a clue from the Stipe guy yesterday. He mentioned the Adobe booth, so I had to go over there and see what he was talking about. And this is super impressive. It's generative AI in Premiere Pro powered by Firefly. So in this example, what they're doing is they're using the pen selection to select this, and then they want more diamonds. So imagine this: you don't have enough diamonds, and you put in the prompt to add an object, pile of large diamonds, and boom, you got your diamonds in video. The other thing that they show is the ability to remove objects. So you can see that it can see this power box right here, and it just remove object, and the object is gone. And that's in video. Like, you can now play it, and that power box is gone. Same thing with a sign here, text on the ground. The one that's really blowing my mind is this: if you've ever had to where a subject you don't have enough frames, you can actually extend out. It'll generative build video on somebody that didn't hold long enough on that shot. So now, in this example of this woman, that shot is all made up from there on out. So that's blowing my mind. So that's one of the things with AI and generative AI that's new at NAB and was announced 24 hours ago.
You know, even if it's not perfect, just the ability that we're already in that direction. But this close from Will Smith eating spaghetti to now you're doing generative fill in video is so exciting. For me, it's exciting for someone who's just getting started, that doesn't have the budget to have a set deck department and to have a whole crew of people who are going to dress a hallway that they're going to shoot down. You now have this new tool in your tool chest to really get the exact creative output that you want. Now, we're going to see some stuff that's overdone, but when it's done tastefully, it'll probably be pretty powerful. Ronnie, what did you see with AI?
Well, first and foremost, I've seen that AI is often just added to some older products, and now we support AI, which is really frustrating. Another thing I've seen that there are very few that actually make a distinction between AI and machine learning. That's also a little bit frustrating. But I was actually signing up for this question to comment on the same that Guy did. So I would just move a little bit further and think that what we will see in virtual production will soon be AI-based. And I saw this demonstration, which we showed yesterday without audio, is Ross showing how you can do cutting and doing actually the TD's job just by voice commands. And I think they are probably, and most probably, working with AI TD functionality as well, even if they didn't show that. So I'll see a bright future where everything is automated, and a lot of that will be called AI, but it's actually machine learning. So let's be aware of that.
And go ahead, Courtney.
I don't know if they're exhibiting at NAB, but because they are from, I think it comes out of Alibaba, China. There's a new product, a generative AI product called Emo. If you look it up on the internet, you can usually find a demonstration of it, which can take, you just feed it a still image. It can be any still image of a face in any expression. And it can, and their demo video shows the Mona Lisa and some other popular, even the the woman in the Sorrow video, if you know the Sorrow AI generated video that has been demonstrated from OpenAI, they take the close up of that woman, and you can then just upload any audio file of someone singing, someone talking, just an audio file, and it will animate with emotion that video face. Not only does it just move the lips, but it moves the eyes, it changes the eyebrows, it makes it expressive, and it takes its cues from the audio track. And it's an amazing demonstration. The animated generated character even takes breaths when it hears a breath in the audio, and you see their chest expand and them take a breath and they turn their heads around. It's generative AI is going crazy, and the use of tools like that to, let's say, in video, let's say you want to change a line in post production, well, you wouldn't have to go back and reshoot that whole scene, and now you can just record the voiceover, or even AI generate the voiceover of the new script from that actor's voice, and generate it in AI and lay it in to change the script long after the film has been shot.
Go ahead, Nick. I can't hear you, Nick.
Yeah, and on that note, I do have to say that like SAG and the Writers Guild really got in just under the wire with their new agreements having AI in mind. And I think that in general, a lot of folks in the industry have not given AI the attention that it needs at this point. To me, as someone who's been involved in technology, as we said before, like since the 1900s, I started in computer graphics in the 1980s, and the pace at which this is developing is insane in my mind. Like I have not seen anything development this quickly. I mean, looking at when Photoshop was released until like how long did it take before a desktop PC could effectively actually edit video? And I'm thinking that was about 10 years. Like I feel like I was using Photoshop in the maybe early 90s, the early versions of Photoshop. And it was until at least the late 90s before something like Premiere was around. And on a desktop, you could effectively edit standard definition video. But, Firefly was introduced into Photoshop in the last year or so. And here it is, just a year or so later, and we're adding elements and removing elements from video in Premiere in a commercially available tool. It's changing really fast, and I think all of us need to be looking at how do we fit into all of this, and how do we leverage that, but also how does this whole industry look when all of these things are available?
Next question.
Next one comes in from our friend Alex 4D Goldner in London town. He says, at NAB, does anyone at the Nikon booth know about or understand anything about their acquisition of Red Cinema? Do they know anything?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, the new CEO of Red is actually on the floor with Jared, the former CEO, and they're touring around. And there's a bit in the press release that they put out. So they're showing off the V-Raptor and the broadcast solutions inside of that truck. We talked about this a little bit yesterday on the show. They're also in several booths in addition to the Nikon booths. Here's the big list of places that you can see Red cameras on the trade show floor. Here is Jared Land with the new CEO, and he's talking about touring him around and introducing him to all the folks there on the trade show floor. And he also refers back to, if you want an in-depth up-to-date discussion, there's a 50-minute or so video that was streamed about 17 hours ago. So I'll put a link to this in the chat where Jared and Scott Balcom talk about the future of Red. So hopefully that gives you a good taste of what's going on.
Next question.
Comes in from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Says, what are low latency methods of providing a confidence monitor to a remote participant who is manipulating a motion capture object? What complexity would be involved for them to have a local rendering engine for lower latency?
Go ahead, Nick.
So to address the second half in terms of the complexity for a local machine, you would need a VPN setup, and then you would have to have clear communication between the local machine for that user as well back to whatever server is operating. And you can do this, and you could have, I'll go to an Unreal Engine type of a scenario where you could have what's called a multi-user session setup. So you can have 2 copies of Unreal Engine, each running on a different computer, as long as they're on a shared network. So let's say this is over the internet, over a VPN, and they each have their own local copy of the same real-time project open. They can be connected through I think it's UDC is the protocol. They're basically sharing information with one another, just like multiple players in a game of Fortnite, where all the joystick commands or mouse commands and keyboard commands and object movement commands are all being shared back and forth. It's not the graphics that are being transported. It's just simply the inputs and the movements that are being shared. And so 2 people can operate the same Unreal Engine level, a motion capture object together. And I've seen that done in a virtual production setup where the studio is here in Philadelphia and there's a remote operator in Tokyo. So that's a complex approach. Potentially a simpler approach would be to use just a virtual machine. So you can use Amazon Web Services or Azure, have a machine that has RTX as being the remote machine. We have some that we operate here so that students that don't necessarily have a high-end machine can access a remote machine. And so now, again, the interface is really just pixel streaming, so very much like a Zoom screen share, and you're passing the commands of the keyboard and the mouse movements, and that's all that's moving out over the internet, and the rendering is happening on some server machine that's got the GPU and just passing that back and forth to the user. So there's a couple of approaches available.
Next question.
Comes in from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. He says, Atomos Ninja Phone captures the camera video for another recording or streaming. You can even make vertical videos. What are the use cases for this, and how do you rate this?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, at first I was like, are you kidding me? You guys hyped this up, and I already have something similar for less, and this was something that a few of us bought. This is called the Axoon CMO, and now they have a 4K version, which this Ninja doesn't do 4K. But this one only goes, so what it does essentially is it takes the HDMI in, and then with this cable, and this is the other cool thing actually about this one is that I have the older iPhone, which still has the Lightning port. This one will work with Lightning. So with my Red camera, I'm able to use my phone as a screen because the screen on the Komodo is super tiny. So this is a gorgeous screen. So this combo's worked well for me. But what the Ninja adds is the ability to record in ProRes. So that is a big deal because with Apple, they don't just hand out that license to do this kind of stuff with ProRes and iPhones. So because Jeremy has a relationship with Apple, he was able to get them to go ahead and license all this stuff and get it working. So I'm excited to see one in person. But like I said, at first I was like, what are you guys thinking? Like you sell hardware and now you got this $399 thing that the monitor is now the phone, and who has an iPhone 15? A lot of people still have 13s or 11s, so you're really limiting your market. But it's $399 for the device. It does stream as well, so we'll see how that goes. That's another thing with this one. I'm able to stream SRT with the Camerify app, so we'll see if that one the new Ninja will do SRT. And also the waveforms, the vector scopes, all that. I like the Axoon line. In fact, there's a pro model of the Axoon that'll do SDI as well. So I'm still kind of sitting here going like, what's next then? Like if this was the announcement for NAB, something for a phone and a light, like come on, Atomos, like get your act together. But Jeremy's new back, it's a publicly traded company, and Eamon, Drew from Bird Dog is now over there. So we'll see what these guys are up to. I mean, that's a powerful team. So we'll see what happens with Atomos. I think we'll see some better products than what we're seeing with just these two that are ho-hum.
I was going to say what Guy said, so we can move along.
No worries. That's going to do it for our show this morning. We appreciate everybody, all the producers asking questions, keeping us on our toes. There's so much going on this week with NAB, so many new announcements, so much stuff is up in the air, and we are so fortunate that we have our team on the ground. We have our crew there. They are bringing it to us live. So again, that coverage is from 2 to 5 Pacific today. Currently, the plan is, now the plan can always change, but currently the plan is all in Pacific time, 2 o'clock Zoom with Andy Carluccio, 2:30 Puget Systems, 3 o'clock Open Drives, John Raydell from VizRT at 3:30, Maxon at 4, and who's Carl Winkler from Lectrosonics. Carl's been on the show before. And if you're interested in any of those topics, you can go to asknab.live right now. And when you go to that website, you have a little drop down and you can choose which one of those slots you'd like to submit those questions. So we're really excited about that. Stick around tomorrow from 10 to noon. The plan right now, I think, Audinate, so the Dante folks are coming in, Sub2R, as well as our friends at Vislink, who've done such a great job and have been so generous in lending us their high-end system. Besides, thank you to the producers. I'd also like to thank the panel. Thanks for being with me here this morning and helping me, as I am not in my normal space, so I needed a little bit more help than usual. And everyone's been very supportive of me. And also a huge thank you to the back-end crew, who's pulling double duty this week, not only supporting us for our regular show, that is 7 days a week. Again, if you're new to us, 7 days a week. I haven't missed a day since March 25th, 2020. But also for our NAB coverage. There's no way we could do it without all the fine ladies and gentlemen supporting us on the back end remotely, as well as for this week, folks on the ground. For the Tlaloc Traversal today, we traveled 38,000 miles. That's 61,000 kilometers. That's 301 million bananas for scale. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in after hours and at NAB.
That was a good show.
Thanks, guys. That was so fun.
This is what that emo looks like with Audrey Hepburn being animated from that single still
I've seen
image. It is amazing.
Goodness.
Look at the emotion of the eyebrows. And it's perfect lip sync, too, of whatever the audio you feed in. You can make them sing.
Exciting and scary times.
Yes, this is frightening. Yes, the Screen Actors Guild is making sure that they have a bulletproof contract. Or that they get paid for these generated videos. That's really all they want.
Nick, how do you plan your work sessions or the Tuesdays? How are you?
I don't. I just show up and students seem to be here and they're already setting things up. I mean, week one was a little bit hectic, but